Welcome to Tech Prospective Podcast presented by Flatiron School, featuring perspectives and stories from individuals all across the tech industry landscape. I'm Jaslyn Ferguson, Community Manager here at Flatiron School, and today I have a very special guest. But before I get into who our special guest is, I just want to give you guys a reminder. If you are watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, be sure to add this to your playlist. We've got some really great conversation that's going to be had today and in our subsequent episodes as well. So you're not going to want to miss out. All right, without further ado, our special guest today is Isiah Cruz, a Flatiron School alum that studied data science. Welcome, Isiah.
Thank you, Jaslyn. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I'm a Flatiron. I talk about Flatiron all the time, and a lot of people ask me about my experience. So now, when they ask me, I'll just send them this podcast.
Yes, you'll just shoot them the link.
Exactly, exactly.
Perfect. Awesome. So let's get right into it. I'd love for you just to introduce yourself, give us kind of an idea of what you're doing now, and where you work, what your title is, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So right now, I started my first full time job as a data scientist in June of this year, 2021. I'm working at Decode M, which is a data science consulting firm in New York. And basically, what we do is we help companies understand what's coming next using data science. So we help them understand the momentum of a product or a person or a topic in society like mental health or COVID, using data science techniques like natural language processing, social listening, segmentation analysis, k nearest neighbors, clustering, etc. So really cool stuff. It's like a really interesting and unique mix of culture, and data science, which is something I've always been really interested in. So it's cool to be doing that as my full time job now, and it's all thanks to Flatiron. I went through the boot camp. I spent a bit of time freelancing, and then this is my first full time job. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that, but that's where I'm at now.
Awesome. Well, yes, you're right. We definitely want to talk more about that. But before we really dive into that, let's take it back a little bit. Let's rewind a little bit. What brought you here? What made you decide one day I want to be a data scientist, and kind of what led you on the path, and how did you get here?
Yeah, yeah. So I always start with the beginning. So I grew up in Union City, New Jersey, one of the most Latin zip codes in the country. I myself am Puerto Rican and well, I was born in the U.S., but my mother immigrated from Colombia, and then my father was born in Buffalo, but his family's from Puerto Rico. So kind of have like that mix there. And growing up, my family always stressed the importance of education. And yeah, at some point it clicked for me, or I'd say around high school clicked for me. I had this crazy idea to go to an Ivy League school. Um, I learned about the financial aid that Ivy League schools offered, and of course, I wanted the best education possible. So I got this dream in my head, and I had no business like going to an Ivy League school or applying, and it was just really like a dream that came out of nowhere. But I worked hard, and a lot of people helped me out, and I was able to do it. So I ended up getting into Yale University. Completely changed my life. It was kind of like a Willy Wonka moment where I won this like golden ticket that changed my life.
Yeah.
And being there, yeah, I met incredible people that I'm still in touch with now. And yeah, it just completely opened up my world to new intellectual pursuits, and mostly, it changed my perception of what I could do in this world. And um, what I majored in political science, which is
Mhm.
pretty far from data science, of course. But I do think it helped me understand kind of how systems operate and how organizations move, and grassroots campaigns, and how all these things kind of fit together. So that was great. But like a typical Yaley, I went into most Yaleys go into either finance or consulting.
Mhm.
And I chose finance. So my first internship was at Goldman Sachs. And then my next one, I worked at like a private equity firm called Macquarie. So, yeah, it was a great experience. It was like, I learned more about the business world. I learned about investing. It was super fast paced, like definitely demanded a lot. So it was cool to be around people who just like held themselves to such a high standard. But ultimately, I wanted something that was a bit more focused on innovation, that was a bit more open, where I feel where I could be myself a little bit more. So
Mhm.
after I graduated, I spent some time kind of soul searching, and I ended up landing on this tech job at a company called Newton X. So Newton X, it's a Series B startup now. It's an
Mhm.
AI powered market research platform. So basically, it connects companies like Google who want to speak to, let's say, an advertising, a CMO of a sneaker brand in Germany. It
Mhm.
connects companies to people who have the insights that they're looking for. Um, and being there, and I'm getting to the data science portion, I promise.
You're good.
Um,
You're
and,
good.
and
It's
being
a
there,
journey.
yeah, so I was on the operations team there, which meant that I was just like, I was given a project and you just had to execute. And that was really awesome for me. I loved just being in tech. I loved being close to the software and just how like progressive the business mindset was in that space. But there was one day where I had this big project, massive data sets, and I kind of took it upon myself to run some basic data analysis on the data sets. I
Mhm.
wasn't asked to do this, but I kind of used it to gain insights and then help me run the project better. And just in doing that, I really liked it. And I started to think about, okay, well, what would career look like that would allow me to do this? And I found data science. So I dove deeper into it. I did my Google searches. I spoke to people, and data science came up as a really good option. Um, Not only that, but I also was interested in the AI and machine learning space, particularly given how like embedded algorithms have become into our daily lives,
Right.
and also because I don't particularly trust the companies that do run the algorithms. So
Mhm.
I was like, you know what, like I at the very least want to have an understanding of this technology that's like changing society and changing our lives. And at the
Right.
most, I want to be able to create an algorithm or AI that is ethical and that is anti-racist and it does promote sustainability. Like that was very interesting to me. So that's
Mhm.
like I was like I lit up. Um, and then I guess the last piece, and I'm sure we'll talk more about the actual boot camp itself. Is then I had to decide, okay, well, do I do a master's program or do a boot camp? And yeah, I mean, for me, I think I deciphered that tech companies don't actually care how you got the knowledge. It's like, do you have the skill that will allow you to come to my company and make us money, or do you not? Like, they don't really care how
Right.
you got it. And yeah, so and I had heard about boot camps. I had friends that had positive experience in boot camps, so I was like, okay, why not? So let's do boot camps. And it also allowed me to work my full time job while doing the boot camp, which was important
Oh,
because I wanted to save more. I wanted to buy a house, all these things.
right.
Um, so then I narrowed it down to, I think, four boot camps that were offering data science. It was like General Assembly, Columbia Data Science, New York Data Science Academy, and Flatiron. And what I did was I went to the head of data science at my former company. Um,
Mhm.
I printed out the curriculums of the four boot camps and I removed the logo and any branding from the curriculums. And I told them, I was like, hey, I'm gonna go buy you lunch. Can you look at these curriculums while I go get you lunch? So like whatever. I went to Chick-fil-A, I got him his favorite meal from Chick-fil-A, I brought it back up. And then he had feedback on all the curriculums. And far and away, he had Flatiron as the number one. He was like, if you do this boot camp, we'd hire you tomorrow because you'd basically learn everything that we do right now.
Wow.
So yeah, so he did that. We ate our Chick-fil-A, and that's it. And I was like, you know what? Like I should, like you, that made the decision for me. Um, I can talk more about what went into my decision of like why Flatiron. I think it's an important decision. I think people should be discerning about that.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah,
So yeah,
that's yeah. And then I jumped into
let's dig into that because
okay.
that's super interesting. I love that you kind of laid out all the options and had him take a look at, what better way to know what's going to get you to where you want to be than to just say, hey, look, which one? So I absolutely love that story. But yeah, in addition to that, what were some of the other things? What did you weigh as you were trying to decide how am I going to learn data science?
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so I'll bucket these. So one was like, what do industry peers think about this? That was like the first one I
Mhm,
did. I just
mhm.
explained that. The second
Yeah.
one was learning style. So I had done a few
Mhm.
Udemy and Coursera courses that
Okay.
are like videos. I had done those, and I also did like the Harvard CS50 one or whatever it is. And I realized I do not learn well from watching videos. Like they're just like they drone on. I just like yeah, I just need more activity. I need to go at my own pace.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so what I did was I did the like free course on Flatiron, which I recommend to anyone who wants to do boot camp. I'm like, go to Flatiron. The free courses are so helpful. They're actually good and they're not too hard. So yeah, so I did the Flatiron course and I was like, wow, like I really like this learning style. It's text based. You go at your own pace. It's at the same time it's interactive. There's GIFs. There's links to YouTube videos, but like the core of it is text. So yeah, I like learning by reading, and then at the end having exercises where you test your knowledge. So I really like that. That was a big piece for me. Um, and then the third one was like, okay, what's the likelihood that I'll get a job, that a good job, coming out of Flatiron?
Right.
So that I think I did like some searches on LinkedIn. I typed in like people who are data scientists and who also went to Flatiron School. So pretty basic LinkedIn search, and I found some promising results. I do think probably should be, and this is some feedback for Flatiron. So there probably should be some sort of database that shows like where people are. Um, but yeah, I found some promising things, and I also looked at the professors, what their backgrounds were. I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but I had incredible professors, incredible, like that I will remember for the rest of my life. Um, so yeah, so I think that discernment I caught on to that early. So yeah, I'd say those three things, and then in general, like you could just tell the whole process with Flatiron was very professional. Like the admissions process um, was really great. I'm forgetting the name of my admissions counselor, but I do want to get it because he was really great. And then yeah, the whole process was organized, and that told me like, hey, if they're organizing this process, that means the learning process, they take that seriously as well.
Mhm. Awesome. To I love to hear how you went through that process because we tell people all the time, take the free course, the free courses that are available on our website. We tell people, really do your research and try to find the best fit for you. So I think the way that you just summed that up as how you approached it was like perfection, in terms of, this is a commitment, right? This is something that has the ability to really change your life. And so I think, just those kind of three buckets that you outlined are just like perfectly said. But yeah, I want to dig a little bit into. So you said you really enjoyed some of the folks that you worked with and uh, your instructors and all that good stuff. Let's dig into that. What was your experience like while you were at Flatiron School?
Yeah. Just one thing before I did find the name of my admissions
Oh, you did.
officer. It
Oh,
was
perfect.
Curtis Richardson. He was so great. He encouraged me along
Shout
the
out
way.
Curtis.
Yeah. We're still in touch. Like, yeah,
Oh,
that's really
wow.
important. Those initial touch points are really important. So he did a great job. Um,
That's awesome.
and then, yeah, because especially in that process, and I noticed speaking to people who are exploring, like people are scared. People are like, "Damn, what am I getting into?" There's also
Mhm.
this like this idea that data science and AI is like it's inaccessible, right? And it's like only the best math minds in the world can do it, and
Right.
it's totally not that way. It's so like I've always been a history and English person. I the highest math I took was like I think algebra 2. Like I didn't even take pre-calculus. Like
Mhm.
I'm definitely not a math person, but like I learned it, and
Mhm.
Flatiron made it easy for me to learn. So yeah, I say all this to say that like the initial touch points are important in terms of
Mhm.
encouraging people and letting them know like, hey, you can do this, and it's true, you can do this. It's really not that difficult as long as you have the intentionality and you're ready to put in the work.
I love that. And so, for anyone that's listening or watching that isn't familiar with the process, as you are going through the application process and coming on board and doing all the things like an interview and all those things necessary to get into the school, you do have an admissions rep that helps you get through those things. So that is where Isaiah was giving that shout out to Curtis, and that's just so awesome to hear that to this day that you guys are still in touch. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
So after that, after you go through or actually through that process, you're going through the admissions process. Take us through that. What did that look like for you? Did you have any fears? We talk about kind of the misconceptions around, okay, you have to be a math wizard to be able to
yeah,
do something like this. Did you experience those fears yourself?
absolutely. Yeah, I thank you for asking that because yes, I definitely had imposter syndrome. I was like, damn, can I do this? But I just, for me, I told myself it was kind of like, hey, I've been kind of like ducking math my whole life. I was like, this is time to jump in, and I also
Mhm.
understood like the rewards that were on the other side. So I was like, I'm gonna do this no matter what. But the admissions process itself, yeah. So you're asked for like a technical. It's a small. It's like a you have your what's it called, like behavioral interview, right? And then you have your technical assessment. And I think a lot of people are scared of the technical assessment, and I'm here to say like don't be scared of it. As long as you complete the free course on Flatiron, like Intro to Data Science, you're fine. You're fine. I think the goal is really just to see like, hey, is this really something you like? Did you put the time in to understand some of the concepts, and then you're in. I mean, the difficult part is getting through and graduating, not
Mhm.
really getting in, not really,
Gotcha. Yeah.
So yeah, so I'll pause there. Happy to go into like my experience when I actually got in, which I know you already
Yeah.
asked.
Let's keep the train moving
Okay,
forward. So once
cool.
you're in, now
Okay,
what?
so I got in. So my first day of class was March 1st, 2020. So it was like a week or two before COVID.
Wow.
Yeah. But I did the part time program anyway, so I was gonna be fully remote anyway.
Okay.
Um, and so the part time program is like, yeah, it's 10 months long. It's fully remote. You kind of go at your own pace. It's like, hey, this week we're gonna do this topic. This week we're gonna do the next topic, and then you kind of have milestones at the end of like every like quarter where you do like a project, and that's really kind of like the assessment or the test of your knowledge. So part-time is good because I got to work full-time while doing the program.
Nice.
So my income stream did not stop. It was definitely a lot of work, and I had to be really disciplined, but
Sure.
it's definitely possible, and I'm and now looking back, I'm so grateful I did it.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
really quickly, I'll just
yeah,
interject really quickly for anyone that's listening. So we have since restructured in that we now call what was once the part-time option our flex option. which is definitely an option for somebody who wants to do it part-time and still go to work. But it's just a little bit different in the setup, in that you can choose how long or how short the process will be, and things like that. So we call it flex because it truly is flexible. So, but yes, similar to your experience, going through it part-time, if anybody, goes to the website and they're looking for it, it's now called flex.
Okay, nice. And then the reason why I mentioned the COVID piece was because it made it easier for me because now I didn't have to commute to work, so I saved time there, and also like a lot of the time that you put in the like in the part-time program or the flex program, at least for me, came on the weekends before or after work. So it was a bit easier to give up my weekends during COVID. But yeah, definitely like had to be on it. Had to wake up early on Saturdays and like, put the work in. Um, so yeah, so you see, yeah, so we start, it's like an intro orientation. You get to know everyone. Our professor, his name was Eli Thomas. He was an amazing professor. He actually passed away like midway through the program.
Oh, okay.
Um, but he was like incredible, an incredible human being. He
Wow.
was he was freelancing for a bunch of companies as a data scientist. One of them being like a literati, which is like a map of litter across the world. Like he was very humanitarian. Um, and he was just so welcoming and warm and encouraged us along the way. I would love to share a link, maybe in the YouTube link when this is posted, of a
Yeah.
video that he shared with us talking about like you are enough. He literally had an entire video, like it was an impromptu meeting. He was like, "Hey guys, I need to talk to you now." It was a friend of his, um, uh, took his own life because he was gay. And basically Eli had a realization in that moment. He was like, he was like, my friend did this because he felt like he wasn't enough, and he
Yeah.
created this call to remind us all, like you are. Basically, he said you are perfect just as you are right now. He was like, you are a data scientist right now. You already it, and he was just, yeah, that's the type of person he was. He really spoke from the soul, and he took the time to get to know people. So yeah, that first session was powerful because we got introduced to Eli.
Yeah.
um so yeah, and he, yeah, and just the way from there on, it was, we got into the cadence of, you do the content, and then he would host like a kind of like an office hours every week. He would kind of talk through different pieces of the content. You could ask questions if you wanted. And then you also had a one-on-one every week with him. So I think between the Slack channel community where people are asking questions and interacting, and you're meeting other people in your cohort, also the
Mhm.
one-on-ones with your coach Eli, and then also the office hours every week, I felt
Mhm.
like super connected to the program and to the learning material, even though I was remote. So I really like that as well. Like Flatiron has created an ecosystem where you feel supported throughout, which is really important because when you're learning a new topic, especially one that's as daunting as like software engineering or cybersecurity or data science, like,
Mhm.
you feel alone. And Flatiron does a great job of creating community around that. So I never felt alone. I still don't feel alone. Um, and yeah, happy to talk more about that as well.
Yeah, I know that, gives me chills just to hear the impact that Eli had on you and all the other, students who got to experience his class. And we definitely, please send me the link. We'll link it, in the YouTube video, because that sounds like a really powerful message that I think you can't you can't tell people that enough, right? We can't, none of us, like, we can't hear that enough, that we are enough just as we are. And life has its way of having so many twists and turns. I'm sure there's people listening right now that are just like, what am I doing with my life? Or like, how do I even take a next step? And can I even take that next step? That'll just be another amazing resource for them to take a look at.
Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome.
I just want to add one thing there. I think
Yeah.
that mentality is so important throughout the boot camp. It's like just reminding yourself, like, hey, I can do this.
Hmm.
Like, I'm really smart. I am enough, and not giving into that imposter syndrome. And it's actually crazy. So the day that he released that video, it's like June something. A year later to the date is when I started my full time job. So it was like
Wow.
this crazy full circle moment.
Yes.
So yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Chills again.
yeah. So yeah, he's
I
watching
love
over
that.
us, and I think his YouTube videos are like he has a plethora of wisdom. I think definitely helpful to go through.
Yeah. Wow. We'll definitely link as much as we can in our description below. That's awesome. Um, so yeah, so you're going through the course, and it sounds like you have an awesome community around you of people that are helping you get through it. As you're nearing the end, does that then set off a whole other set of fears and anxieties of, okay, now things are getting real. I'm almost done. Am I going to be able to make the transition from, okay, I've taken a course to, okay, this is going to be my career?
Yeah, I actually didn't have that much anxiety at the end because Eli had prepped us from very early on to like start getting ready for the job process. So
Wow.
one thing he asked me to do was to create a spreadsheet of just like to start collecting job descriptions. So I had a spreadsheet. It was like company name, position, and then it was like what are the requirements. So like these are the skills you need to know, and then the final thing was like job description. So like what are the responsibilities you're gonna do. So I had this massive spreadsheet of the skills I needed to know and the responsibilities I was expected to do. So from a very early stage, I was understanding. Okay, what are companies looking for in candidates right now, and I was able to reverse engineer and build my projects around those skills, and you know go into the learning process with that in mind. So that was super helpful. Um, and yeah, I just had confidence in my profile. I had confidence in the work I was putting in. I will say I do think I was in uh, a, a different position and a privileged position, having gone to an Ivy League university, like a bit, and already being in tech a little bit in the operations. That's not to say, that's not to say others can't do it. I think they absolutely can, and this field is wide open, and people are trying to hire data scientists left and right, and they know that Flatiron data scientists are high quality. Um,
Mhm.
but that is to say that, yeah, that was just kind of like a perspective I had going into the
Yeah.
process. Um,
You were
so
like, I got this.
yeah, I really did.
You
I
were
really
so
did
ready.
think that.
That's
I
awesome.
really did think that. And I think it showed in my interviews. And the truth is I did have it. Like I did know
Yeah.
this stuff. I did know this stuff. I put the work in, I learned it. Like I had it. I had it. So, and I had this business knowledge, like being on the operations team before, I had this kind of like intersectional knowledge where I had been client facing. I understood kind of like how to get things done in a business sense, and then I was blending that with programming skills and data science. Um, and what I would say though, I think where the anxiety does and should set in, and with all these boot camps, is like I think like there's a 3/4 mark, and actually our graduation speaker talked about this. Like around the 3/4 mark, that's when a lot of people, I guess, like yeah, they kind of like they fall back. And in this setting, what happens if you don't kind of like if you're not on track at a certain point, you just get moved to like the next wave of the program. So you're given another chance. It's not, it's not like super harsh. But yeah, I think like there's a part where it gets really difficult, where like you're asked to do a project that's like kind of a little bit beyond the scope of what you've learned. But it's not to say that you can't do it. You absolutely can do it, and everyone a lot of people do it. It is to say that like it's intentionally challenging because you're learning a new skill in a short amount of time, and that's not to be taken lightly. Like people spend 3 4 years learning this skill. This is we're condensing it. So just keeping that in mind and persevering through that portion and knowing like, hey, the rough patch is coming around this time. Like, let me get through this and then I'm good. Is like I think a helpful mentality to have. So yeah, that's when the anxiety hit me, honestly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I love how, coming from the background that you came from, it's I think a great example of how you were able to say, okay, yeah, I want to do data science, but I have these other skills or I have these other things to bring to the table, and this is how it kind of comes together as a full package, which is, I think, just something necessary to do, no matter what career you're going after. Figuring out what makes you stand out and what makes you different is definitely, I think just a good practice for anyone who's considering doing something like this. What skills have I already been doing, or what are some other skills that can go hand in hand with this that can ultimately, push it over the edge of like, I bring this and I bring that. So I absolutely love that. But you mentioned something. So coming from Yale and, from, like you said, kind of a privileged place in that regard, um, let's take it back a little bit. Let's rewind a little bit, and talk about the fact that, while that was something that definitely worked in your favor at that point in your life, leading up to all of this, you had briefly mentioned that, you came from a family of immigrants. And I think you mentioned that you were first generation, going to college. Talk a little bit about, what did this mean, right? Okay, first, I'm sure, going to Yale was like huge, check. But then, basically being able to take things even further and say, now you're a data scientist. What did that mean in that kind of lens of what this meant in terms of, building something, for your future and your growth, but what that meant looking back at, where your family had come from, and how does that kind of, I guess, fuel you, or does it fuel you? How does that play into things?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. I Okay, so I went to visit my family in Colombia last year, and I was interviewing my grandpa I was just asking him questions about his life and recording it. And I asked him about like how to make it in America, which he did. Um, and he one of the things he said, he was like, in America, I forgot the word he used, but he basically said like, if you don't have technical skills in America, like it's pretty hard. Like you should have some sort of technical skill, right? Because otherwise you're like doing you're doing like manual labor jobs or jobs that don't really involve like the brain primarily, and that like you'll like if you do that, you'll often be at the whim of like employers, and like technical is like the way to go. So I think that kind of highlights what this experience has meant to me in the context of the question you asked, which is for me, it's a safety net. It's a safety net. It's a economic safety net because I have a technical and a scarce skill. And
Yeah.
if anything goes wrong, I will always have that to fall back on. And obviously I have to hone my craft and make sure I'm up on like the latest trends and programs, etc. But for me, that's a like amazing sense of security. Um,
Wow. Yeah.
and yeah, so it's meant that for me.
Mhm.
And that's why, like, honestly, I feel like graduating Flatiron and getting a full-time job is like almost as big of a moment as it was getting into Yale. It's like, it's huge for me. It's huge for me. And then I'd also say it's inspired my family members to do similar things. Like a lot of my family members are asking about boot camps. Actually, my
Wow.
father, he had been working in retail his whole life, um, which he didn't particularly love. I mean, he's really good at it, but didn't particularly love. And and he saw me graduate from the boot camp, and I think it inspired him because he actually just graduated from a cybersecurity boot camp with Full Stack Academy. He like crushed it, was like near the top of his class.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah,
Congrats to him. That's
yeah, yeah.
awesome.
And he's someone who always had like a tumultuous relationship with school and education, but he had an incredible experience with boot camps. And I think that just further highlights that like these boot camps are not like they're not about like the like not to knock educational institutions too much,
Right.
but it's not all about the theory and like how and like how you present yourself and all those things. Like Flatiron and these boot camps are like, look, this is the skill we want you to learn it, and like and you're good. Like it's very efficient, it's very direct, and he had a phenomenal experience and he learned it. And
Mhm.
yeah, so now he's looking for a cybersecurity job. So yeah, I think it inspired my family, and it
That's
showed them
awesome.
like, hey, like look, you can put if you put your mind to something, you can become a data scientist. And they know themselves like I was the last person that would ever become a data scientist, but they saw me do it, and I think that's inspiring.
Wow, that's awesome. Um, so kind of touching on that a little bit more in the sense of, obviously, when you have, a cultural background, a lot of times that can come into play with the work that you do or the things that you set out to do. And I know you mentioned when you were talking about AI, and I think you mentioned that one of your interests was, looking into, kind of anti-racist AI and things like that. Talk a little bit more about that. That's something super interesting that I'm sure our listeners will want to hear.
Yeah, yeah. I mean AI, machine learning, um, algorithms, like they right, like we're trying to replicate human decision making, and
Hmm.
the way we do that is we feed it data based on how the world is currently. And the world currently is racist and sexist and classist and misogynist and
All of
and
these things.
homophobic and
Yeah.
ableist, right? So
Yes.
so then what does the algorithm do? It just replicates that because that's what we're
Right.
feeding it. So I am very much of the belief that like we need people who can catch that and feed it data that isn't that, even though it's pretty hard. Or we have algorithms that like consciously like reverse those things.
Mm.
And or like are actively dismantling things. So yeah, yeah. Yeah, but even now, even when I use TikTok, like I know what they're doing. I know what algorithm they're
Right.
using. Like it's crazy. Like it's
Yeah.
just it allows me to be freer and allows me to be more conscious of how I move through the world because
Yeah.
I understand. I understand. So yeah,
I
I think
love
it's
that. I feel like one
yeah.
day we'll have to have a conversation just about the algorithms of TikTok. You'll have
Yeah,
to fill us in on the details behind the
for
scenes.
sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. Did I cut you off though? Were you going to say something?
No, I would say like the last thing I would say on that is like I think it's still a little bit unclear to me how exactly I'll like deploy my knowledge and skill set
Hmm.
to do these things like in a really tangible way. Um, for now, it's just like being conscious of it is like really valuable, and also
Yeah.
being able to make a living off of data science, and also to like hone my craft is really
Yeah.
valuable. The third missing piece is like, all right, well, how do I like actually integrate this into an organization, a company? I'm like
Hmm.
super interested in like the cryptocurrency, blockchain,
Hmm.
decentralized organization world. So I think that's where it'll go. Um,
Hmm.
and there's definitely some room to like intersect like blockchain and AI technologies or data science technologies. Um, so yeah, so it remains to be seen how I'll do that tangibly.
So one day you'll, change the whole world, but you're just taking it a step at a time right now. Love it, love it, love it. Um, okay. So with that being said though, okay, so you're clearly passionate about this. And you've clearly inspired your family at this point. But before you inspired your family, I just want to touch on this one more thing. Did you ever feel like I'm, maybe going to enter into this space and there won't be other people who have my same background or, who can relate with me on some of these things? Did you ever feel that way? And, or did you, ever just kind of see it as an opportunity to be that voice in the tech space? Um, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, another great question. Yeah, I definitely thought about that. I definitely thought about that. I know when I was applying, I was like, damn, like I don't really have. I was like, damn, I don't really have. Sorry about that. Like someone just Facetime me. Um, I was like, damn, I don't really have friends who work in tech. I thought about that.
Yeah.
It ended up being that one of my freshman counselor at Yale became a data scientist, and he was like he's been super helpful throughout the whole process. Um, but even then, like that was because I went to Yale. I wouldn't know someone otherwise. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's definitely a thought. I think to people who are having that thought, like I think the solution is like Flatiron gives you that community. Really, like that's it. Like Flatiron solves it. You get access to not only your cohort, right, which is like I don't know
Mhm.
what 10 to 15 other students,
Right.
right, and then you
Who are
get
going
access.
through it with you.
Yes, you get access to not only your like the coach of your cohort, but you also interact with like other coaches in the program.
Mhm.
And then you get access to like the Flatiron Slack channel, which is like buzzing every day. It's like there's jobs there. You could ask questions about code problems. There's meetups. There's like a lot of good stuff. So Flatiron provides a community. So I wouldn't really think about that too much. Definitely like check your network and see who is in tech and who can connect you to someone in tech. If you don't, if you want to get into like data science or software engineering, but I wouldn't place too much emphasis on that.
Mhm. Awesome. And would you say throughout this process of whether it was while you were going through Flatiron School or afterwards, would you say there were any like key challenges that really kind of stuck out to you that you were faced with, whether it be actual external challenges or even internal challenges?
Yeah, yeah. My biggest challenge was just I just didn't have any time. I just didn't have any time. Like
Mhm.
it was a lot. It was a lot of work. But the
Yeah.
way I viewed it is like everyone has to go through that like people don't have to go through that at one point or another. But like in the way our system and society is set up, like you benefit from going through that period at one point or another. And that was it for
Mhm.
me. I was like, there are people who like I know yeah, there's like very successful people who were working and then got like an MBA at nighttime, right? There's like I was the way I viewed it is I was just doing that for data science. So yeah, I definitely had to learn how to manage my time better, and also manage my relationships because I just wasn't able to be as present for people, and people were like,
Mhm.
what's going on, and kind of like taking it a certain way, and which is totally valid because I wasn't communicating. And once I realized that, I sat down the people closest to me and I was like, hey, like this is how my schedule looks. This is like what my day to day is like. This is why I'm like this right now. And I was like, and I asked him, I was like, look, like I could really use your support right now, whether it's taking things off, helping take things off my plate, or literally just understanding the space I'm in. I was like, this is for the greater good. And people understood and people were super receptive. And I've actually talked to other Flatiron people. I remember during the boot camp, they were going through similar issues with like their significant other or a parent. So this is definitely a thing, at least for the part timers. I can't speak for the full timers. Um, or the flex, not the full time. But uh, yeah, it was managing time was the big challenge for me.
Gotcha. Yeah. Wow. Awesome. So many good, just little nuggets of knowledge that you're dropping. I feel like anyone who's, thinking of going down this path, all they need to do is just listen to this podcast episode and know exactly what to anticipate. So awesome. Um, in that same thought, if you were to do anything differently, would you do anything differently?
Um, no,
You
no,
go
I
back.
would not. I would not. I would not. I know that's a boring answer, but
No, that's
you
good.
know, my that's my truth. That's my experience. It
That's
worked
awesome.
out. I loved it. I could focus on things that I did do that I think were like, had I not done them, would have gone differently. If
Oh
that's
yeah,
helpful.
let's hear some of those.
Yeah. Okay. So, two things. One was I was very intentional about my projects, right? Like I didn't just want to do a project. And you have to be careful with this stuff because you can't, like, sometimes it's not time to hit a home run, especially when you're learning a new skill. Like sometimes the
Mhm.
single, the double is good. Like just
Yeah.
get the project done, move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And Eli was really helpful with that. I was like, I wanted to do something for the mayor and like all these things. He was like, dude, just like pick a project and do it. And it was true because I picked the project and like even that one I could barely get through. So like thank God I did that. Um, but I okay, so yeah, so my advice is threefold actually. One is like know when to hit the home run and know when like a single will suffice. My
Mhm.
second piece of advice is using your capstone strategically, specifically your capstone, which is the final project you have. So what I did was I went to my former company, Newton X. I said, "Hey, I know that we have. I've noticed that we are trying to categorize when to blacklist people who email us. And I feel like a data science methodology would. I feel like I know a data science methodology that would help here. So I spoke to
Mhm.
the data science team at my former company. I said, "Hey, I want to do this project. I'm going to help you guys build a machine learning model that will predict when someone should be blacklisted." They're like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
why not?" So that's what I did. So I used my capstone to help my company in a in a really practical way. Um, but also, that helped my job application process because I had, you know, my company was super impressed. They were like, "Wow, this is awesome! Like, we're going to use some of this code in our database." And they
Nice.
actually wrote me a recommendation for it. But then also when I went into interviews, I was able to say like, "Hey, I've actually, I've dealt with real world problems." And
Yeah.
that's kind of the knock on like boot camp students sometimes. It's like, "Hey, yeah, like, yeah, you know the skill, but like, have you actually put this into practice?" So I
Mhm.
optimized for showing like, "Hey, I can put this into practice." So that was
Yeah.
like my capstone. And my final piece, insight here is, um, once I graduated, or actually before I graduated, I started my own data science consulting firm. And obviously, it wasn't like, a massive operation. It was just me. But what I did was I reached out to some of my friends. Again, a privileged thing, though, like some of my friends who had started Y Combinator backed startups from Yale. And I said,
Mhm.
"Hey, like, would love to get a hold of your data and just like do data science work for you for free." And like they let me do it, and then I was able to go into my process saying like, "Hey, I started this consulting firm. I started working with real life problems at companies, multi-million dollar companies that my friends started. Like I can be a contributor early on." So I think that really helped. And yeah, just being conscious of like the biases that people have towards bootcamp students, and then like correcting or adjusting for those along the process, I think goes a long way.
Nice. Again, all solid advice. I love it. I think, that's so valuable. If you're listening right now, like, please know how valuable that was, what he just said. Within those kind of different areas that you talked about, yes, I think, a lot of people have concerns when doing something like a boot camp of, okay, well, then I'm just going to have, the certificate, I'll be done. And then I have nothing to show for like what I can actually do to actually get a job. But that's why it's all the more important to make the most of that time and, to try to seek out opportunities and to make every project count. Or not every project count, because like you said, summer, summer are home runs and some are not. But really, being strategic in that way, I think is super smart. So awesome to hear. All right, I have one final question that we ask all of our tech perspective guests. But before I get there, one last thing: any other advice that you would give to somebody who's on the fence or future Flatiron School or boot camp students?
Yeah. I do have a few more things I wanted to, I just feel it's important to get out there.
Yeah, let's do it.
And just because when I listen to podcasts, like I'll take notes as I go. And yeah,
Mhm.
I think this is helpful. So one of them is like, yeah, going more into this idea of like, like it's not always time for a home run. Like when you're learning, like you're not going to learn every subject, every topic like an expert. Like it's not feasible. It's not efficient. Don't do it. Like just learn what you need to know, learn the baseline, and move on. And what you'll find in this industry, which is beautiful, is that you learn along the way. There's
Mhm.
things that I learned at Flatiron that gave me a place to start. And then, as I started working in the real world, I at least knew where to start and you could find things out. The beauty of this industry is that you could, all the answers you need are on Google. That's the truth. Like you literally, any code problem you run into, you type it up, hey, what do you do here? And there's hundreds of people who have been through the same problem. And there's forums like Stack Overflow, Kaggle, etc., where you see what other people have done, and then you do it, you copy it, and then that's it. It's a communal industry. Everyone helps. It's collaborative. That's part of the beauty. It's open source. This knowledge does not belong to any one person. It's communal. So, yeah, just do what you need to do to get through the boot camp. Don't go too crazy, and then you'll learn along the way. You'll build the skill along the way. Um, so yeah, that's one thing that's really important. I had to learn that. And Eli's saying for this was he was like, don't let great be the enemy of the good. That was like really powerful for me.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yes, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. That you do you read does that resonate with you, Jaslyn?
It does.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, so that's a point. Another point is an opportunity came up in the Flatiron Slack channel. It was
Mhm.
a company called Alex Crown, which I'm still freelancing for. It's a fashion tech startup. They were looking for a boot camp grad. They posted a job in the Slack. I reached out and I ended up working for them part time. I was doing 10 hours a week, um, helping them with their algorithm, to help people purchase clothes. And I was learning. So while I was finishing up my boot camp and while I was in my job process, I was working for Alex Crown, and I think that also helped me in my application process. Not only had I worked at a tech company, but I also had my own consulting firm, and I also was freelancing for a fashion tech startup. So um, just finding, I guess, like the pro bono work piece is helpful. Like they didn't pay me, I should say, like they didn't pay me. This is absolutely like an opportunity for me to um, earn experience. They did provide some equity compensation, which is great, but it wasn't like a salary. um,
Mhm.
and then yeah, just finding ways to get your hands on like real world projects, I think is really helpful. um, and the last thing I'll say, actually, I should have answered this before when you said things I would change, which is like just being more intentional about making connections with people in my cohort. I definitely
Mhm.
met a good amount of people, and still in touch with them. But I wish I invested a bit more into those relationships.
Mhm.
It's just tough when like there's just so much going on. But I think it really is worth it, and it's just nice to have other data scientist friends that you can bounce things off of. So
Mhm.
yeah, those are the last tips I can think of right now.
Nice. Well, those are awesome tips. And yeah, I mean, just like you said, that quote from Eli of, don't say it one more time.
Don't let great be the enemy of the good.
Yes, that definitely resonated with me, and I'm sure will resonate with a lot of people. We get so caught up in certain things, but yeah, that's such a good way to look at it.
My most important thought is that um, I think the way our economic system and society is set up is it like intentionally shrouds things in mystery, and
Mm.
like over complexity. um and it has economic incentive, right? Like, if I can say I'm a data scientist and this is a really tough topic and therefore you should pay me X, right? Like, that
Right.
increases the likelihood that I'll have a job and then I'll get paid what I want to get paid. um but I just, yeah, I reject that notion. I reject that culture. Like, yeah, I'm a data scientist and it definitely wasn't super easy to learn. But you know, if you work hard and you stay at it, and you go through Flatiron, like, you'll learn it. You'll learn the skill, and it's really not that difficult. What really matters is, do you want to do this or not? That is the decision you should be thinking of. Not, can I do this? Because you can do anything. You can do anything, and yeah, I think we should all reject this notion of like overcomplicating things. People are here to help
Yeah.
you. You can learn this stuff. It sounds really complex, but it's not.
I love that. And I'm so glad that even though I was wrapping up, that we went back
Yeah.
because I think that's perfect. So many people get so intimidated by things. And again, it's not just, oh, this person is intimidated because of their own internal stuff. It really is a real thing that happens within society where there's so many things where there's a certain element of gatekeeping or, traditionally only certain people have done it. But yeah, that's the beauty of, being in this age of the internet and also boot camps and just so many resources being available that it doesn't have to be the sometimes scary paths that are the most intimidating. There are options. And so yeah, I love that. I'm so glad we
Yeah.
so glad you said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. 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 I love it. Well, thank you so much, Isaiah. It has been an honor having you. You are one of our first alumni that we will be featuring on this Tech Perspective podcast. So we're just thrilled to have you, and all of the knowledge that you've dropped. Again, anybody who just listened to this, if you don't realize how much, just incredible information that was just dropped here, go ahead and do yourself a favor and listen to it again. Take some notes because Isaiah just really, really came with all of the knowledge. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank
Um,
thank you as well. Thank you as well. Thank you for asking great questions. You pulled those insights out of me, and yeah, that's like a testament to how good of an interviewer you are. And Flatiron's lucky to have you. And thank you for doing this podcast as well and just getting this information out there. And I can always be reached. I'll send like my socials and stuff. And
Yeah,
yeah.
I was gonna say if you want to give yourself a shout out to any where people can follow you or again though we can drop the links once we're sharing this content, but if you have any social media handles that you want to shout out, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing is I started a cryptocurrency with a friend of mine. It's called Litter Token, and you basically you earn tokens by picking up litter, and it's super basic, but basically it's incentivizing people to do things that are good for the world.
Nice.
Yeah. So the Twitter handle is at litter underscore token. So yeah, follow us there. Like, get involved if you want. Um, and yeah, otherwise I'll put my socials in the description. But yeah, shout out to Flatiron for just like making this stage of my life possible and putting me in a position to like go deeper into the tech world. Yeah, just really grateful for this and grateful for this conversation.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And litter token. That's go follow at litter_token. That's awesome. I love it. See, you're just changing the world with every project that you take on. So
Yes.
we love that. We definitely love that here. So thanks again, Isiah. For anyone listening, definitely be sure to follow all of Flatiron School's social media channels to stay up to date with not only what Isiah is doing, but other alumni. And be sure to join our Tech Perspective group on Facebook, where the conversation continues and we will hold discussions around each episode. Thank you so much, and we will be in touch.